Hello, so it's now 2 days after the Cotswold Way Ultra. So this was an ultra. The aim was to run 102 miles, and it started at Saturday at 11 in the morning, and the aim was to get to Bath by Sunday evening. Now, spoiler alert, I got to 92 miles, not at the end. And let me give just a brief overview of what happened before and during and after the race. So, before the race, I had a really, really good training block of 6 months. And then at the end of July, the start of August, I started to get a niggle in my knee, and which I had physio exercises, got back up to speed, and I got back up to about 20 miles again in terms of the distance, and then I started tapering off. So that was the only blip in the training, and I don't think it impacted me on the day because my core strength was extremely good. I'd been doing plyometrics, I'd been doing the speed, the hills. I'd got enough recce's under the belt at the distance of 20 to 25 miles to carry me through and to give me the confidence that I could run on the terrain that I'd aimed for. I'd done specific training, as I say, on the train, on the actual trail itself. I'd also done the fell races, which gave me the ascent to give me the confidence that I can get up and beyond the type of hills, the length of hills that I would be walking up. Remember now that on an ultra this long, you will not be running up the hills, you will be speed walking up the hills with sticks, may I add, with lightweight running sticks. So the prep went okay. I felt that everything was in place for the day, all okay. There was a lot happening around about, I'd say June-ish, but to be fair, so there was a lot happening in my life around June. But again, this was 3 months on. We'd moved on. I felt that I was well rested. I got very good night's sleep about a couple of days before. I did think that I was coming down with a cold 3 days before, and my glands were up and what have you. But that passed by the point that 3 days after that, I woke up on the day and felt absolutely fine. No sign of cold or anything. I did have a few minor symptoms of a cold, just sneezing and what have you, several days before. But again, woke up on the day, felt absolutely fine. And I don't think that had much impact on my run at all. I'm very, very careful about running post-virus or post-viral infection because you can get yourself in serious heaps of trouble through post-viral chronic fatigue. But I felt that the symptoms were so mild that I'd be okay. It wasn't a systemic infection, so I think I got away with it. It was fine. It was absolutely fine, and it was the right decision to run. So on the day, I got dropped off by my partner Leanie, got dropped off in Chipping Camden. There was a few friendly faces that I wasn't expecting to see there, so that was always nice to bump into, say for example Tash from TAC, my old running club. Yeah, and a couple of others that I recognised too. And so I checked in, I got my tracker to put on the shoulder. So that would enable people to dot watch at home and they could follow me down through the course. And I was number one. Fantastic. Not that I was going to be number one first um, back through at the end of the course, but I was number one. It's probably because my surname is Bagley, so alphabetically, um, I've sometimes been head of the list. For instance, in school on the register, Bagley always seems to come first in the register, unless, of course, there's an Atkins or Atwood or something. But anyway, I was number one, so that was cool. So anyway, back to the school, back to the check-in, and I registered, got my number, got my pins, got all the safety information such as the phone numbers for the run directors, medics, and what have you. And they gave the run briefing, and then by 11 o'clock in the morning, we were off from Chipping Camden. Now, something that I didn't bank on, and again, this was a bit of a schoolgirl error, is that I looked at the weather until about a couple of days before, and the forecast at that stage was that it was going to be slightly cooler and there was going to be some rain overnight on the Sunday morning from 2 a.m. Well, that completely changed. Both days was going to be warmer, up to 19 degrees, and I felt it. Particularly on the first afternoon, we were running at the warmest part of the day when we started off. And so I was trogging along and everybody was in a good positive vibe, good place at the start, blah, blah, blah. And so it was a lovely social vibe on the course. People were like chit-chat and on we go. Came down through Broadway. There was this festival on or some sort, with like stalls and like crafty stalls things. So I had to weave through. Then came through up to Stanway, up through Winchcombe. Gosh, that hill never gets any easier out of Winchcombe. Oh, it's a trog. Up to Bella's Nap, up to the ancient hill fort. Yeah, so there's a few hard hills going out through Winchcombe and up towards Cleve Hill. And up in Cleve Hill, they had a very, very skeletal aid station in that there's water and a few jelly beans, so I refilled on water. And again, another learning point for me, if I do another 100, which I probably am going to be doing, is that you don't need to fill up all of your water bottles if you don't think you're going to be drinking out of them. Granted, it's a safety measure that if you do fall over, you will need the fluids, because if you're flat on your back, then you don't know when the ambulance or the mountain rescue is going to come. But later in the day, I would find that I was just not drinking that many fluids. I mean, I was I was passing water sufficiently, so I was hydrating enough, but I just wasn't drinking as much as they were recommending that you should be carrying. So I was actually lugging around a whole load of water, I suppose, for the first 12 hours on my shoulders that I needn't have been lugging around. So I think I need to take a lesson that I need to gauge upon what my experience is of how much water I'm taking on board, how much I think I'm genuinely going to be using, and then maybe add one half soft flask on top in case of emergencies. I digress. So I went on from Cleve, fantastic views on a clear day, hardly any cloud, fantastic views down over Cheltenham. And then as you're moving around the course, you're going around to Gloucester. And then and then when did night start to fall? Night started to fall as I went into Birdlip. So that was, I think, was it 38 miles? Yeah, 38-mile point. Went through Birdlip. It was just about getting dark then, so it's about 8 o'clock at night. And I then had to put my head torch on. And so, one thing that happened just before Birdlip, there was a bag drop, I believe, at the 27-mile mark. Yeah, it's a bag drop there. And I left the bag drop and I forgot to pick up my electrolyte tablets. And because it was a warm day, then this wasn't great. What happened is that the bag drop was down towards the start of the hill, and I got to the top of the hill before I realised what I'd done, and I didn't want to run back down the hill to pick up the electrolyte tablets because I thought I just can't face that. So I went the next 20 miles without electrolytes on a warm day, which is another schoolgirl error, and may have led to me feeling a little more wiped out than I would have been. What also surprised me is that the organisers didn't have any sort of electrolyte drink. Normally at ultras, they would, but they didn't. I mean, I managed to pick up a salt tablet. I think it was a bit later on from somebody at one of the later aid stations. But by that time, then I got my electrolytes back, to be fair. What I did find, though, when I didn't have the electrolyte, is that it contains minerals and what have you. So I had cramping in my calves. So I'd never had this before because, of course, I'm always drinking water with electrolytes in. So then it clicked. I was like, oh my God, I got cramping in my calves. What's going on here? Anyway, fast forward back to Birdlip. Darkness is falling, head torch is on. For those of you who don't know, when you put a head torch on, you lose a certain sense of depth. Now, during the daylight, you obviously have a lot clearer view, and it's not under artificial light. And I've got a very, very good head torch, but even still, to get it to last for as long as I did, I needed to have it on not so much the top setting, but a medium setting, which meant that when it's not kicking out as much light, then you have to be careful where you're putting your feet and stuff. So that A, slows you down, and B, it is generally more difficult to see where you're going, in other words. What I found, and I was going in over Painswick golf course, is that I tripped over a stone. Now I've got sticks with me, and so that saved me from completely face planting. But what I did find is that my right big toe was really, really badly stubbed. And by the time that I got to Painswick, to the aid station down at the rugby football club, which is at 47 miles, so this must be about 11 o'clock at night, by the way. So that was possibly about half an hour, 45 minutes later after I'd done the injury. And I had a huge blood blister all over the top of my toe, which I won't show you because people might be eating when they're watching this. But in essence, I spent about 10-15 minutes in the aid station basically patching myself up together. I should preface this by saying that I put plenty of K-tape on the places that I thought might be rubbed, such as the big toes and the two outer toes and what have you. But you can't K-tape everywhere. And so what I did is, and this is entirely at your discretion whether you do this or not, and I'm not a podiatrist or a nurse or a clinician, but I popped the blood blister because I wanted to continue with the race. To not have done that would have been excruciatingly painful in my view. So I took the personal decision to pop the blister and to put a blister plaster over the top. There was a physio standing near me, and she said, "Oh, just bang some K-tape over that," which I did. And she also said, "Do you want some micropore tape to ensure that the K-tape is fastened?" So it was a bit of a farce by the end. I mean, I had this very well held together sort of arrangement of plasters and K-tape, micropore, what have you. So then I left that aid station, and with all the kerfuffle and what have you, then I managed to leave my running sticks, my running poles back there. So back I had to trot back to the aid station, which added on a bit of time. And so then I went on into the night and came down into Stonehouse. Now at this point, there were some people that sort of came from nowhere, and there was about like 6, 7 or 8 of us. And the navigation on my watch was saying that I was turning right. I was thinking, because I'd done this section of the route on the Cotswold Way relays in the past, and I'd never been up through King Stanley. And I'd not really looked at the course too closely, but it was sending us through King Stanley, which I wasn't familiar with. So it was kind of all right that actually there were 6 or 7 of us had suddenly materialised together going up through King Stanley. And so we had some fun trying to navigate up through there and up onto the track. And I held with them until a certain point, but quite a lot of them were big burly blokes who were just going far quicker than I was at that stage. But it was nice to have a bit of banter at 1 a.m. in the morning with these burly blokes who go, yeah, can't wait till dawn and all this and and off we go. They're very gung ho, what have you. So that was really good vibe too. So then I went on and you go through and you go up along through Coley Peak, and that's when I bumped into somebody who I follow on his podcast, so that was nice. And then onwards we go, going up over Camdown, which gave spectacular views in the dark. And at this point, one of the burly blokes that I'd seen before came from a different direction and said, "Oh, I'm dropping out. And I said, "You all right?" And he said, yeah, I've just twanged my knee or something like that. And so he was going to pull out. And so that made me realise that actually people who are, proper athletes were falling by the wayside at this point. He was this massive burly bloke who looked like this pro, and he was dropping by the wayside. So I thought, oh, cool, blimey. And then I went off trotting on. So at this point, I was still speed walking up the hills, jogging along the flat, jogging downhill and stuff. And then I was coming into Dursley. And then comes the big hill from the pub down in Dursley up to Stinchcombe golf course. And I started getting this guy tagging along behind me. I don't think he knew the course very well. So he was tagging relatively close to me for about 5 or 6 miles, which is okay because at the end of the day, I've done this sort of terrain quite a few times. And then around the head of Stinchcombe Golf Course, crikey, that seemed to go on forever. I don't know if anybody's ever run that section, but you feel as though you're going around the golf course. I mean, I must have been going around the golf course for about an hour, rounded the edge of it, before you come off the escarpment. Beautiful views again over the the dark scenery and out to the Bristol Channel. And then down into North Nibley, where the guy carried on ahead of me, and I sat down to sort out something with my phone or something in my rucksack, can't remember what. And then as I was coming up towards Tyndall's Monument, the dawn broke. So that was really nice view, because you got sort of a red sky and the dawn was just beautiful. And then going along the top from Tyndall's Monument is just spectacular scenery coming down into Wootton, and you've got the fields, the clear views of the trees and the woods. And I started catching up actually with a couple of the burly blokes who I'd passed previously coming down into Wootton, and we were kind of a bit of a group coming down into Wootton and trying to find the church for the aid station. And I came into the aid station, it was probably about 7 by then, 7:15, 7 o'clock, and they had some hot food by way of spaghetti rings, which I've not had spaghetti rings in decades, but it was a nice touch just to have something warm anyway at that hour of the day. And it was at that point that I asked that I asked one of the medics, "Do you have any Vaseline?" And he said, "Yeah." So we got some out from the car. And then one of the other runners said, when I asked for Sudocrem, somebody said that they had some Sudocrem at an aid station once. I don't think it was in this event. He said that, but he said that somebody offered to put his Sudocrem on for him somewhere where it was chafing, because apparently that volunteer at the aid station had the drama of not even being able to reach down to put on his Sudocrem at an event before. So we all looked at him as though that was slightly pervy to be offering to do that. But I guess it takes having run so far in an ultra to know that actually you can't bend over very far after about 50-60 miles of running. And then one of the medics said that there's another funny story that I could tell, but it's actually slightly I don't think he'll go down well if somebody was eating, as I say, during watching this. So then we came out of Wootton, and I was passing a couple of people again, so I was picking up pace as people were fading. And I was going back and forth with a couple of people, as you did along the route. And then you're coming into, is it Horton? Yeah, Horton. I was feeling okay. Then I left Horton, and it was at that point, I think it was in the late 70s, early 80-mile mark, that I was starting to feel as though I had nothing left in the tank. To be fair, by way of context, I got a text message left on my phone the day before the race, literally the afternoon before the race, saying that some recent tests that I'd had at the doctor's, blood tests, had come back saying that I had low iron. So, to be fair, and my partner doesn't know how I got as far as I did, given that I had low iron. Upon reflection, this maybe was a contributing factor. Okay, well, it was a major contributing factor to me drawing the conclusion that I wasn't going to make the 102 miles overall. And whilst I was slightly upset on the course, and I had a little blub at one point going around Deerham Park, then I was a little bit teary for a couple of minutes, but that passed because I thought at the end of the day, I got so far. I wasn't ever sure if I could even run 102 miles. I wasn't even sure whether I can run 70, 80, 90 miles, to be honest with you. I had no clue how far I can run on this occasion. And you don't know until you put yourself in that position how far you can run. And so by the 85-mile mark, as I was coming up to that point, I got to, I think it was Tall Martin I got to, and I had nothing in the tank. And I phoned up my partner and she said, don't quit. And so I pushed on for another 7 miles, feeling really ropey. And I just tried to run and I couldn't. And I couldn't even jog. It was the point that I could just about walk. But the problem was I hadn't trained to walk that far. And so I got knackered just having walked 7 miles in a row. So for next time, I'm going to have to train to walk as well as training to jog and to run. The other thing, I suppose, is whilst I do take a multivitamin supplement with iron every day, is to make sure that my iron uptake levels are great and to ensure that not only am I eating the iron, that I'm eating a little bit of vitamin C with it, to ensure that I'm getting the uptake of the iron as well. So that's another learning point. Do I have any regrets about bailing at 92 miles? Not at all. When I got to the 92-mile checkpoint, they looked at me as though I was completely batty that I wanted to bail with 10 miles to go. And they said, is there anything that we can do to persuade you to carry on? And I said, no, absolutely not, because at mile 85, I was ready to bail. So I pushed on for another 7 miles, and that was tough. That was super tough. And there was absolutely no way that I could make the final 10 miles. No way. It was just so abstract in my head that no. And I'm one tough cookie. I can endure a lot in life, but there was no way that I was going to make 10 miles. So I got scooped up by my partner and come home, and I've made sure that I've refueled, I've got my sleep back in sync, and I've been for a couple of very short swims in the 2 days afterwards. My feet, my 2 big toes are slightly mashed up and sore still, so I'm just taking care not to overdo things. I'm not even going to think about going running before the next 2 weeks are out, primarily because I want my feet to repair. Also, you need to give yourself mentally the space to repair as well, because it takes a lot of effort to actually concentrate for 27 hours and running 92 miles. And whilst I knew most of the route like at the back of my hand, you still have to concentrate. And it's a lot of ask for your body and your brain to be able to repair just like that. So the big question, would I do it again? In the 24 hours after the race, I said, not on your Nelly. Now I'm 2 days afterwards and I'm thinking, should I, shan't I? But we'll see how it goes. I'll see how the next few weeks pan out, because I want to make sure that I'm completely recovered first before I make any huge decisions like that. Because it's quite a commitment doing the training for these sort of events. And also it means that you have to completely take a couple of weeks out afterwards to recover. So you can't just hop and pop between different races like you can if you're doing 10Ks, half marathons, what have you. But anyway, thank you for listening. Hope you may have learnt something either about the Cotswold Ray Ultra or about things that you may want to think about in your running as well. Remember that I'm not a clinician and everything that I've said is applied to me as a person. And so if you have any doubts about diet, or you need to speak to a physio, or you need to speak to a doctor, please do that, because I don't know your health and your health may be completely different to mine. Okay, anyway, over and out. Take care now. Bye bye.